FPL is finally back, and in this video I'm going to discuss my Game Week 5 transfer plans. After a fantastic start to the season, I'm trying to get myself in the top 10k in the coming game weeks, and I think I've locked down a plan in how I'm going to do it. So you're going to make sure you stick around for this video. Make sure you drop a like. We're aiming for 200 on this video, and as always, please do consider smashing that subscribe button. I'm on the road to 10k before the Game Week 5 deadline. I know you legends can do that. So without further ado, let's get into today's video. Yes guys, okay, so here's how my Game Week 5 team is currently looking without making any transfers. I have 1 million in the bank and 1 free transfer available to me, and my overall rank right now is 227,004. What a difficult way of reading that overall rank. Now, as I mentioned, the plan is to get into the top 10k in the next few game weeks. You're probably sat there thinking, Nacho, you're miles off the pace. I'm only 23 points behind. So we do need to remember that even though you might be in the hundreds of thousands, you're only 20 odd places away from getting yourself into that top 10k. And I plan on doing that in the next few weeks. So looking at my current team right now, I'm pretty happy with the way that it's looking. Now, don't get me wrong. I have been on the Pickford-Turner goalkeeper rotation, and it has been an absolute disaster. But with a home fixture of a Turner against Burnley, yes, it isn't the best fixture, but it is close to being a very favourable fixture. And realistically, with only 1 free transfer available to me, I just can't justify making a goalkeeper transfer when one of my 2 keepers has a favourable fixture. And Forest at home, I back them to get a result here. Whether they keep the clean sheet is another matter. But realistically, if you're in a similar situation to me, I just don't think a goalkeeper transfer is a priority right now. Now, looking at the overall defence that I have, this week I will be starting Ruben Diaz, Udogie and Chilwell. Now, Chilwell and Udogie I'm more than happy to have this week. Are Chelsea a little bit ropey right now? Absolutely. But I still think Chilwell is worth a hold. I don't think it is a viable sell right now away against Bournemouth. I think there are attacking potential for someone like a Ben Chilwell. Ruben Diaz was my transfer in last week. Away against West Ham a few game weeks ago may have looked okay, but I think that's going to be a tricky ask for Man City to keep a clean sheet. I think West Ham have the tools available to hurt them in counter-attacking situations, but nonetheless, I'm more than happy with Ruben Diaz and the team. It's just the fact that he is a very steady player, isn't going to get those huge returns that the likes of Udogie or Ben Chilwell could do so. And on the bench is Estupiñán and Kabore. Now, I'm very hesitant with the Estupiñán situation because I think they will concede, but I also would not be surprised if Estupiñán was to score in that Brighton fixture. So I have a little bit of a deliberation there what to do with the defender situation. But right now, I'm leaning towards this back 3. Now, moving into the midfield, there are a few players here that are just absolutely locked in, no problems whatsoever. Bukayo Saka, one of those, yes, hasn't necessarily hit the major heights that we were expecting right now, but I'm more than happy to stick with him as my Arsenal investment. Mbeumo has been fantastic. A tricky game away against Newcastle, but I still think he is absolute value in FPL. And the other one's James Maddison. I absolutely think Son is a viable option in our FPL teams, and if I was buying from scratch right now, Son would be the answer. But doing Maddison to Son for a free transfer, I physically can't do that because the money available in the bank. But if you were planning on doing that, I think you really have to have no other problems in your team to make that sort of move, because James Maddison is just ticking over so nicely in FPL. The question is, Son probably has that higher ceiling and that explosive manner about his game. Now, the 2 Man United options are the ones that are causing a little bit of debate right now. Marcus Rashford and Bruno Fernandes. Now, it's worth noting at the time of recording, it looks like Anthony is not going to be in the Man United team for a little period of time off the back of the allegations that he has right now in Brazil. So it's a little bit unclear right now what the Man United starting lineup is going to be. We could see Bruno Fernandes pushed out to the right, Rashford on the left and Højlund down the middle, but then who is going to occupy that number 10 role? So a little bit murky waters right now regarding Man United, and this is where the first deliberation is for my team regarding a transfer. Rashford or Fernandes could turn into Son for that fantastic home game against Sheffield United. So I need to have a little bit of thought about whether making that sideways move to a Spurs midfielder is going to be a viable move. Because realistically, I don't really want to be making a transfer for a 1 game week punt like the Spurs game against Sheffield United at home. I still think the Man United fixture is brilliant against Brighton. I think Man United have the tools available, like their moments in transitions and counter-attacking, to really hurt Brighton. And I'm expecting goals in that game. If you have a Man United defender, I wouldn't be too confident, but equally, if you have an attacker, I think this is actually quite a favourable fixture on paper. So I'm going to discuss some potential transfers out for these players in a moment. Looking at the front two, Jackson and Haaland. Jackson's a bit of a problem for me. My problem with Jackson right now is that the XG is fantastic for him. He's one of the highest for the forwards, but Broja coming back after the international break. If we don't see Jackson score away against Bournemouth, I would not be surprised to see a slight integration of Amanda Broja into that Chelsea team to get him some minutes. They don't have the cup competitions like the Europa League or the Champions League to be able to really have the luxury of playing Broja in those games. And if Jackson doesn't put the ball in the net, I would not be surprised if Pochettino gives those minutes to Amanda Broja. And all of a sudden, we are looking at a rotation Chelsea forward, which we do not want. We bought Jackson for a 90-minute man, and if that situation arises, then we could be in a little bit of trouble. So selling Jackson this game week isn't out of the realms of possibility at all. The other one, of course, is selling Haaland. No, of course I'm joking. Haaland is in the team forever. But Mbama, potentially too, someone like an Archer is also a consideration. But looking at when I would actually play Archer, it doesn't look very often. So this is how the team is looking right now. We're going to come on to some potential Nicholas Jackson replacements, as I know that's something I'm considering right now and something I know you guys might be considering. But let me know your thoughts in the comments on this general team as we speak. Okay, so as I mentioned, honestly, Nicholas Jackson is a potential transfer out for me. Now, it feels very luxury because he is away against Bournemouth. But as I mentioned, if we are getting information in the press conference and Pochettino says Broja is up to speed and it looks like he could be getting minutes, then I start to question the actual value of Nicholas Jackson in the game. So there are three options that are currently on the table for me. And I think these are probably the direction that a lot of you are considering right now. So first up, Julian Alvarez, the cheapest of the three that we're looking at 6.7 million. So it would put a bit more cash in the bank, which is always a fantastic thing. Now, the good things about him, Game Week 6 and Game Week 7 for Man City are fantastic. Away against West Ham doesn't necessarily look like the best entry point, but realistically, for Man City, I don't really view any fixture as a bad fixture because they just create so many opportunities for themselves and they dominate possession in every fixture that they're one of the few teams in this league, being Man City, that I don't really look at the fixtures. But obviously, Forest at home in Game Week 6 is unbelievable. And I would feel like I would want a double up in the Man City attack for that fixture in particular. The XG per 90 for Alvarez is 0.46, so decent underlying numbers. And as I mentioned, he is the cheapest of the pick, which means I can reinvest some funds in the rest of the squad. Now, what are the downsides of Alvarez? Well, first and foremost, Champions League is on the horizon. Between game weeks 5 and 6, Man City start their Champions League campaign. They also have to work alongside that EFL Cup, and obviously then game weeks 2 of Champions League, game week 3 of Champions League. So there is going to be rotation in this team. Now, right now, Alvarez isn't even playing as a forward, and that is also a problem. Yes, he is getting into goal-scoring opportunities, but still this team is built to funnel chances through Erling Haaland. Alvarez is basically playing as a number 10 alongside Foden behind Erling Haaland, which is a great thing, don't get me wrong, but it also means that he isn't the one who is furthest up on the pitch, which Haaland is currently occupying right now. And even though it's 6.7 million, he's offering amazing value, I am just a little bit concerned that because he isn't the forward, maybe Pep might look to throw in a few different players into that number 10 role. We could see maybe Jack Grealish come into there, Bernardo Silva if Doku goes out to the right. And we haven't even seen the integration of someone like a Matheus Nunes right now in the team. Maybe he will be deployed as a bit more of an advanced player. So I love Alvarez as a pick. He's definitely a consideration, but I am just conscious that Pep roulette now that Champions League is on the horizon. But look, he's played a lot of minutes so far in this Premier League. So maybe it's just one of those players who's going to continue to play in this Pep system. Now, another player who I am obsessed with is Darwin Núñez. Honestly, if you could sit here right now and tell me that Darwin Núñez is going to play 80 minutes every game till now to the end of the season, he's in and he is locked in every single game. I rate this guy so damn highly. He's the only one last season who was anywhere close to Erling Haaland numbers. And you can see there, 1.27 XG per 90 so far for Darwin Núñez. Outrageous numbers. Now, the problem with Darwin Núñez, as we know, is that he either starts and comes off early or he is basically a bench player. He's only started once so far this season in the Premier League in game week 4 where he got those 2 assists against Aston Villa. And of course came off the bench in game week 3 against Newcastle where he scored that brace. For Liverpool, the fixtures long term are fantastic. We know in game week 9 that is when the fixtures literally become the best ever. They have like Everton, Nottingham Forest at home. They have the most ridiculous run I've ever seen. But right now, I actually think it's a perfectly good time to go in on them. Yes, they have teams like Spurs away in game week 7 and Brighton away in game week 8, but I really don't view those teams as defensively sound teams. And I think Liverpool are one of those teams right now where, yes, they might concede goals, but I expect them to create numerous chances in every single fixture that they have. And with Darwin Núñez being only 11% owned, I really think he's a fantastic differential investment into that Liverpool team right now. It is just whether you can ride out the potential benchings and early subs along the way. But honestly, I think he starts for Liverpool. And even if he gets 65, 70 minutes, he's one of those rare players that I actually wouldn't care about because he accumulates so many big chances in that side. Now, last up is going to be Arsenal's Gabriel Jesus at 7.9 million. He is the differential Arsenal pick at only 2% ownership, but that is because he is coming off the back of that long-term injury that he sustained last season, well, in the pre-season period. Now, the lack of minutes is an issue. We don't really know if he's fully up to speed. He's had a few benchings that we have seen. He came off the bench and obviously scored in game week 4 against Man United. And the other issue for Gabriel Jesus is Champions League, similar to Alvarez, is on the horizon. Could we see potential rotation there? I don't know whether Arteta views Gabriel Jesus as the Champions League and Premier League forward, or maybe Enquiries is going to share minutes with him because we know he is more than capable of stepping into this Arsenal team. So right now, at the time of recording, if I had to buy one, I would love to buy Darwin Núñez, but I think the sensible route would be go Julian Alvarez. I want to see Gabriel Jesus play 3 or 4 fixtures before investing in him, just to know that he is fully up to speed, because he has had a few knocks now, and I just want to make sure that he is actually being fully integrated into the squad and not slowly phased in. So right now, I would rank these: Julian Alvarez 1, Darwin Núñez 2, Jesus 3. I just need to decide whether I'm going to buy one this week. Now, the other major decision that we need to make is what the bloody hell to do with our double Man United midfield that I currently have. So if you're in a similar situation to me right now, you might have Rashford, Bruno Fernandes and Maddison. And of course, in game week 4, Son produced an unbelievable performance, scoring a hat-trick, playing as a number 9 for the first time this season, taking away Richarlison, who went to the bench, Solomon playing off the left, Kulusevski off the right, Maddison in that number 8/10 role. And it was an unbelievable performance for Son. It's the only reason why anybody is considering moving away from the Man United midfield. Now, I've got some of the numbers up right now over the first 4 game weeks, and this is based on per 90 minutes, it is worth noting. So I've kind of like done it by expected FPL points. So you can see Bruno Fernandes is top, 7.49 expected FPL points. Son second, followed by Maddison, and 4th Marcus Rashford. Now, I want to look at the XG column right now. You can see Bruno Fernandes at 0.51 XG per 90, but of course, he has had a penalty in that goal scoring period. Son at 0.37, Maddison at 0.36, and Rashford at 0.54. So Rashford is actually leading the way for XG per 90, even though he is lowest for expected FPL points. And again, when we are buying midfielders in the game, yes, we do like to have the one that can do the lot, like a Maddison, like a Bruno Fernandes. But end of the day, I want the goal scorers in their respective teams, and Rashford is that man. And I think him going off to the left, even though we don't know much about Højlund, is just going to be a beneficial thing for Rashford, because it means the defenders don't have to easily deal with him as a number 9. He can come off that left flank and do what he done against Arsenal. He only needs a few opportunities to really make his impact on a game, and I just feel much more confident of him as an asset when he is operating off the left. So looking at the actual underlying numbers, selling Bruno Fernandes to Son doesn't actually make too much sense. And I think Rashford is actually a difficult sell now that he has moved off to the left. So looking at the fixtures in isolation, over the next 4, I would say they are very even, but in very different phases. Game week 5 is unbelievable for Spurs, and I absolutely understand if you want to do a Bruno Fernandes or Rashford to a Son and double up on your Spurs, because end of the day, that could honestly be 5-0. Spurs could pump Sheffield United, and we could see another Son hat-trick, and before you know it, we've missed the boat on back-to-back hat-tricks for Son. But after that, Arsenal away, and I get it, some people are probably sat there thinking, yo, Spurs are playing so well, they are going to bop Arsenal and then it's going to be a goal fest. But it's worth noting, Arsenal's expected goals conceded is like the second best in the league so far. They are not easy to score against by any stretch, Arsenal. And I'm not expecting Spurs to absolutely batter them, especially at Arsenal's place. And then they got Liverpool in game week 7. And again, I know the narrative is that Liverpool are frail defensively. And yes, they might be. But I still expect this Liverpool team to be incredibly strong. And they're going to cause a lot of problems for that Spurs defence. So it could be a really open game. But it's not a good fixture. It's just we think in our heads that the narrative is going to be goals, goals, goals. But look, it's a tough fixture for Spurs nonetheless. But then in game week 8 is the unbelievable game away against Luton, which again, we saw what they've done against Burnley. Spurs away from home can do damage, and they could do exactly that against Luton. So looking at United, Brighton, Burnley, Palace, Brentford. I actually think the next two are really good for attacking assets. I think Brighton are there to be got at from a defensive perspective, and Burnley we know can concede goals. They've done it already this season. But Palace and Brentford, much more streetwise. I'm not expecting huge goal fests in those. I could see maybe a 2-1 or a 2-0 for United over those two fixtures. So I think realistically, selling Man United for a Spurs asset is basically narrowing it down to game weeks 5 and game week 8. Do I personally want to sell Bruno Fernandes or Rashford for Son in game week 5? I would love to. But long term, is it a good FPL move? I don't think it is. I'm currently in the thought process of just accepting that I have James Maddison and I hope that he matches, or if not slightly scores less than Son over that period. Because for me, having the double Man United midfield over the next 4 is what I would prefer to have than the double Spurs midfield at the time recorded. But it is worth noting, if I was wildcarding right now, I would actually go for the double Spurs and go for Son and Maddison alongside Rashford most likely. But let me know your thoughts in the comments. But right now, I'm planning on sticking with my Man United double midfield. Okay, and the last little bit that I wanted to talk to you guys about is the return of European football, because this is going to have a major impact on FPL in general. So Champions League, Europa League, and the Europa Conference League, there's so many bloody leagues, is back, and it is returning between game weeks 5 and 6. So we have game week 5. I don't think there'll be much problems there, but basically from game week 6 onwards, there is going to be issues for a lot of teams going forward. So just to remind you, we have City, Arsenal, United, and Newcastle in the Champions League. Then we have Liverpool and Brighton in the Europa League, and Aston Villa in the Europa Conference League. Now, looking at those teams right now, I think there's going to be a lot of rotation in a lot of those teams. Brighton is top of the tree. They haven't featured in a European competition, and I think De Zerbi is going to be playing his best 11 week in, week out. Looking at the games that they have, they are tough. So I think Brighton is in a void now from buying perspective. And if you're sat there with somebody like a Matoma, like a March, then I think you are in a bit of a problem right now. And I think selling might be a good move from game week 6 onwards. And it's worth noting, if you're in a stupid owner, I actually think he's probably the only one that I feel confident that he's going to probably just play week in, week out, because he's an absolute machine. But what I would say is, I don't know what impact this is going to have on Brighton as a whole. So we need to monitor that situation. We've seen City, we know they are just rotation risks in general, but we've gotten used to that with their introduction of the Champions League over the last few years. The one that we don't really know about is going to be Newcastle, how they are going to adapt to that Champions League football. Isak and Wilson are already minutes risk, but with the introduction of the Champions League, I think that's a complete avoid now. I cannot really sit here and convince anybody to go into their assets. And the other one that I have a little bit question mark about is someone like a Kieran Trippier. I really rate Livramento. He offers such a fantastic dynamic to this Newcastle team. Is he just going to sit there week in, week out while Kieran Trippier does Tuesday night, Saturday, Wednesday night, Sunday? I personally don't think so. We need to monitor that situation right now, as I'm expecting Livramento and even Lewis Hall to get some game time in the Premier League during this period. Outside of that, I think Aston Villa are going to be probably pretty strong in both sides. I think Unai Emery knows how to balance the competition. And Liverpool, I think the fixtures are just too easy in the Europa League. He could easily play a Gakpo up front and a Darwin in the Premier League. So I think he is going to play his strongest team in the Premier League and maybe rotate in European football. But I just wanted you guys to know that Europe is back between game weeks 5 and 6, and it is going to be a little bit of an issue for us. Okay, guys, so with all that said and done, yes, without having Son, yes, the problems with Nicholas Jackson, yes, with the Turner pick for rotation, I think I'm going to stick with this team and roll my free transfer. Personally, I just feel European football coming back is such a big thing in football, and knowing that I could have 2 free transfers off the back of 1 week of European football just gives you that breather and that flexibility that if for example, a United player, an Arsenal player got injured, I have that luxury of having 2 free transfers to move off into any direction whatsoever. And we'll also get an understanding of, let's just say Alvarez was to be benched in the Premier League and then he played in the Champions League. I'm thinking to myself, oh, okay, this is a problem for Premier League going forward. I think that 1 week of information from both the Premier League games and the European games is going to be way more valuable than you using your free transfer. But it is worth noting, if you have 2 free transfers right now, I would try and get Son into your team, because I really do think that Sheffield United at home game is going to be one of those fixtures where it could be hat-trick territory for him once again. So this is how the team is looking for Game Week 5. I just want to quickly show you Game Week 6, just to show you why I think having 2 free transfers would be viable. So just for those that are interested, here's how my Game Week 6 team would look. And the fixtures are looking pretty damn good for a lot of the assets. Defensively, looking brilliant. Home against Forest, home against Bournemouth, home against Villa. Really good fixtures. The midfield, of course, we will have the situation of Spurs versus Arsenal. You need to remember, if you did bring in Son into this team, then you're looking at basically Son and Maddison versus Saka in one fixture. Not an ideal scenario. And of course, Haaland at home against Forest. And realistically, I'm looking at that double United now, away against Burnley, thinking that is pretty damn tasty. But having 2 free transfers in this situation, as I mentioned, this is a good position to be in, because in my goalkeeper situation, if it just goes pear-shaped, I can look to sell Pickford, maybe bring in a Newcastle goalkeeper if that looks the route to go for, or even Flecken at Brentford if I think that's a viable move. And as I mentioned, if Jackson has another shocker and he can't score, maybe selling Jackson in Game Week 6 to go for the one that looks way more minutes sustained is the route to go for. So that is the plan, guys. Rolling into Game Week 6, let me know your thoughts in the comments. Yes, guys, okay, so that wraps up today's video. Thank you so much for tuning into this Game Week 5 transfer plans. I have dropped a wildcard draft video. Make sure you go check that out. I'll pop it up somewhere around here where you can click onto it. And that just leaves me to say thank you so much. Make sure you drop a like and, of course, subscribe to the channel. And I will see you in the next video. Take care, guys. Cheers.